You're on your knees in dust so thick it coats your tongue like chalk. Gray. Everything is gray. The air, the ground, the broken walls that used to be a school. Around you, sirens wail in fractured rhythms, and somewhere to your left, soldiers are bending rebar with their bare hands, shouting numbers you can't quite hear. But there is another sound, quieter, persistent. A phone ringing, not from a pocket or a bag, from underneath a concrete slab so massive it would take a crane to lift. You crawl closer, your palms scrape over shattered tile and something wet you don't want to identify. You press your ear to the rubble, and the moment your skin touches the debris, the ringing stops. Like it knows you're listening, your hand trembles as you dig through the dust, find the phone wedged in a crack. The screen is cracked but glowing. You answer. A voice calm as a mortician's says 2 words, "Stop counting." Then it hangs up. May 12th, 2008, Sichuan province. A 7.9 magnitude earthquake tore through China, killing nearly 70,000 people. But the real horror wasn't the quake. It was the schools. Thousands of children buried under structures that crumbled like wet sand, whispered about as Tofu-Dreg construction, cheap and cursed. The government buried the numbers, whistleblowers disappeared, and you were there. Not just a survivor. A structural assessor sent to review school sites days before it all came down. You remember seeing something in those blueprints that didn't fit negligence. It fit intent. This isn't a disaster story. This is a murder scene wearing a natural disaster as a mask. And when the phone in your hand lights up again, same number, new message. It is just 2 lines, an address and a time. Midnight, the morning of May 12th, starts innocently enough, which should have been your first warning. You arrive in a county town whose name you'll never forget, and whose streets still smell like diesel and frying dough, carrying a clipboard and a digital level like their weapons against entropy. Your assignment sounds bureaucratic, almost boring. Post-occupancy safety spot, checks on public buildings. Schools are at the top of the list because they're high occupancy, high sensitivity. You tell yourself you're here to prevent worst-case scenarios. You're useful, trained, needed. It is a comfort you'll regret later. The first campus looks cheerful in that unnerving way fresh paint can be cheerful. Bright murals of cartoon pandas and rockets, plaster that smells like it cured last month, banners about achievement and the future strung between columns like promises. But your eyes keep snagging on details that don't belong. Hairline cracks too straight to be settling. Patchwork repair on a building that is supposedly new. Decorative column wraps that look less like decoration and more like bandages hiding something infected. You run your fingers along a stairwell rail and feel grit, concrete dust, on a structure that should be pristine. A teacher passes, tries to joke. Make us look good, okay? The laugh lands wrong because the walls around you feel staged, like a set built to pass inspection rather than time. You take photos anyway, the spacing of stirrups inside a partially exposed beam, aggregate where it shouldn't be visible. The way one support column sounds hollow when you knock, like a drum made of lies. You note the contractor name from a posted permit, the type of concrete listed, the dates that don't line up by 3 months. You tell yourself it is sloppy paperwork. You tell yourself that because the alternative is intent, and intent means something you're not ready to name. Then 1428 arrives like a trapdoor opening under the world. The first jolt throws chalk from a classroom board in a white burst. The second turns the hallway into a wave, and you're surfing on tile that shouldn't move. The sound becomes the horror, not the shaking, but the sound. Concrete grinding against itself like teeth, glass popping in wet little bursts, and underneath it all, a deep, wet groan from inside the building, like it is exhaling its last breath. You run toward the courtyard and see the impossible. The older admin building across the street, the one with chipped paint and Soviet-era bones, shudders but stays standing. The school structure, newer, stronger, proudly funded with a plaque by the front gate, pancakes in a sequence that looks practiced. Not just collapse. Collapse in order. Floor after floor folding like a magician's trip, except the doves don't fly away, and the audience is screaming. You taste dust and copper panic. You hear a child screaming under a slab, and your training tries to override your terror. Load paths, void spaces. Triangulate where a pocket might form. You find a gap, barely wider than your shoulder, and squeeze your arm in until your ribs protest. You feel a tiny hand grab your finger. Alive rescuers, Pull one kid out, a girl with pigtails and blood on her forehead, and for 3 seconds the world is pure, blinding relief. Then an aftershock hits and that relief gets crushed into guilt sharper than any rebar. Because the building shifts again and the gap you just used closes like a jaw, and you hear the screaming start again from deeper inside, where you can't reach. As dusk comes, the town becomes a field of tents and ash-gray faces. You volunteer, because standing still feels like betrayal. In the chaos, you meet a mother. She doesn't introduce herself with her name, only with her daughters. Lu Min, grade 3. She sits by the window. She presses a class photo into your palm like it is evidence in a trial, and maybe it is. Her eyes keep searching your face, not for comfort, for competence. She wants you to tell her whether the building failed like nature or like a choice. You don't answer because you don't know yet, but you're starting to suspect. Night makes everything sharper. Flashlights carve tunnels through dust that hangs in the air like guilt. Someone sets up a temporary command post and you're asked, too casually, to hand over your notes for centralized coordination. The request is polite. The people asking are not asking. You stall, saying your phone battery is dead, your files aren't organized. You keep the most important photo, one close-up of a column base where the steel looks wrong, hidden behind a calculator app like a teenager hiding contraband. While you help move rubble, your boot kicks something that shouldn't be there. A length of rebar with an end that is too clean, as if it was cut before it snapped. You pick it up and see a faint paint mark, like inventory labeling. That isn't how random failure looks. And then you notice a second pattern. Men in hard hats with no dust on them, moving through the ruins after the rescue teams rotate out. Quiet, efficient, carrying specific pieces of debris like they're collecting organs for disposal. One of them, chalk, marks the cut rebar in your hand, reaches for it as if by instinct, and pauses only when he realizes you are watching. He smiles like a coworker. His eyes don't match the smile. They're calculating something you don't want calculated, he says. Give that here, dangerous, behind him. A flatbed truck waits with the top already tied down, already ready, like they knew what they'd be collecting before they arrived. You pretend to comply and let the rebar slide behind a broken desk instead. The man's smile thins to a line. As the truck rolls out into the dark, you feel the choice form in your throat before you even think it. Follow or stay and keep rescuing. And while you're deciding, your phone, supposedly dead, buzzes once, bright as a heartbeat. A new text from an unknown number. 3 words. You saw it. Morning in the disaster zone arrives with clipped announcements and bottled optimism. Officials assure order, schedule, stability. The air still tastes like pulverized concrete, but now there are schedules printed on laminated cards as if routine can bandage reality. You barely slept? That text message kept you awake like a splinter under your nail. You saw it. 3 words that confirm someone is watching, someone knows, someone cares that you're paying attention. But morning brings a different kind of pressure, wrapped in productivity and purpose. You're pulled into an assessment team. Your expertise is suddenly valued. Your badge gets you past barriers that turned away journalists yesterday. You're told you can help prevent secondary collapses, that your technical eye matters, that lives depend on getting this right. It feels good for about 90 seconds. Then they slide the paper toward you. Preliminary cause, natural disaster. Structural failure, unavoidable. The language is already set like concrete. You're told to add your signature so we can move resources efficiently. The request is wrapped in compassion, delivered by a supervisor with a kind voice and eyes that don't blink often enough. He says families need closure, not technicalities. The line is perfect. It sounds humane. It is also a weapon designed to make resistance seem cruel. You ask for more time, more sampling, more documentation. He nods like he understands, then taps the signature line. We all want the same thing here, don't we? The question isn't a question. If you refuse, you're not just delaying a report. You're making yourself a problem in a place already drowning in problems. And problems you're starting to understand have a way of disappearing. You try the careful route, collect evidence without making noise. You revisit the ruin at dawn when the light is clean and the rescue crews are rotating shifts. Your training becomes your shield. Focus on what can be measured, what can be documented, what speaks through science instead of suspicion. You find inconsistencies that cluster like fingerprints. Identical column failures across multiple classrooms, identical voids where concrete should be dense, as if someone scooped out the middle and hoped gravity wouldn't notice. Steel that looks more like decorative suggestion than load-bearing truth, thin as the promises that funded this place. You bag a small concrete fragment, scrape a sample, photograph aggregate size. Nothing dramatic, just method. That is what makes it frightening. The horror is measurable, quantifiable, provable, and that makes it dangerous. Then you see the truck again. Same tarp stretched tight, same workers with hard hats that have no dust on them. You follow at a distance through streets clogged with relief vans, past banners thanking donors, past lines of people waiting for water with the patience of those who have no other choice. The chaos makes tailing easy. Everyone is moving. Nobody looks twice at another person with a clipboard and a haunted expression. The truck turns into a fenced yard behind a temporary logistics hub. Guards, clipboards, an air of authorized efficiency that smells wrong. You creep close enough to read a hand-painted sign, debris processing. Inside, through chain link gaps, you see stacked rebar being sorted like lumber, tagged like inventory. One worker uses a grinder to remove paint marks, sparks flying like tiny distress signals. Another photographs pieces before they disappear into a shipping container. Not recycling, evidence management, evidence erasure, industrial scale forgetting. A colleague from your team, someone you trusted because he still looks shaken like you, whispers that he has seen this before, not after quakes, but after incidents. He says they're cleaning the story, an ally, a shared sanity. You arrange to meet later somewhere public, and he squeezes your wrist like he is passing you courage by touch. It is the first human moment you've had since the ground stopped moving. Across town, the parents begin gathering near a memorial wall, writing names on paper because the official lists are incomplete, because bureaucracy moves slower than grief. You recognize the mother from last night. She is there, standing stiff with that class photo, watching police lines form like weather rolling in. She asks you quietly if your report will say the truth. You try to answer carefully. I'm still checking. She nods, but her eyes don't believe you have that kind of time. She says they're already counting us as quiet. That line hits harder than any aftershock. Grief is being treated as disorder, mourning as obstruction. The crackdown doesn't arrive with batons at first. It arrives with procedures. Move along. Don't block the road. This is not the time. As if there will ever be a time. Your colleague fails to show up at the public meeting point. His phone goes straight to a recorded message, generic and distant. You tell yourself reception is bad. You tell yourself he is busy. You tell yourself anything that keeps the dread from becoming a conclusion. But conclusions form anyway, like ice in your chest. Back at the assessment tent, you discover your own files behaving strangely. Timestamps wrong. Folders empty where data should be. You ask for a charging station and notice a different cable plugged into your phone than the one you brought. You don't remember plugging it in. You don't remember leaving your phone unattended. Your stomach drops anyway. Not ghosts. Control, someone with access, with authority, with the keys to everything you thought was yours. That night, you go back to the ruins alone because the building is quieter when no one is watching you watch it. You find the rebar you hid behind the desk. It is still there. But now there is a new tag tied to it with thin wire, like someone marked it after you left. Your employee number, and one word stamped in red ink that looks too much like a warning returned. Your hands go cold. Someone isn't just cleaning evidence. Someone is tracking you, documenting your resistance, building a file, and as you stare at the tag, your phone vibrates with a call from a blocked number. When you answer, the same calm voice from the text says, "If you want to keep your hands clean, stop digging." Then, softer, almost gentle, "Your colleague didn't. You go hunting for paper because paper is harder to argue with than memory. At least it is supposed to be. The County Construction Bureau is half functioning, half triage. Cracked walls lean like drunkles. Stacks of forms tower on desks where exhausted clerks try to make disaster look organized. As if enough filing can restore order to a world that crumbled. You flash your badge and get a small miracle. Access the clerk helping you is young, maybe 25, with eyes that keep darting toward the door as if expecting someone to materialize and snatch away his courage. He prints what he can. slips a few extra pages into the stack like contraband, and murmurs, "Don't copy this here." His hand trembles when he passes you the documents. You realize he is not just scared, he is mourning. His niece went to one of those schools. The documents show patterns that feel like a hand on the back of your neck. The same contractor name repeating across different villages, same build year, same innocent phrase, tucked into procurement notes. Cost-saving substitutions. Material invoices that don't match the design specs. Budget lines that bloat in some places and vanish in others like money passing through a magician's hands. One page lists reinforcement steel, delivered with a signature that looks suspiciously like a stamp, the kind of signature that nobody actually signs because nobody wants their name attached to what it approves. Another shows inspection dates that land on days when the inspector was allegedly at a training seminar in a different province. You cross-reference 3 different documents, and the timeline collapses into impossibility. The bureaucratic texture becomes its own horror. Not a knife, not a beast, just a system that can crush a building and then file it neatly under act of God. Then you find something worse, a revised plan memo dated weeks before the earthquake, approving a temporary reinforcement solution for one school. Standard enough. But there is a follow-up memo days later authorizing removal of temporary supports to restore aesthetics before opening ceremony. Aesthetics, the word feels obscene, like using interior decorating to describe a morgue. This wasn't negligence. Negligence forgets. Negligence gets lazy. This reads like choreography, like someone dancing toward disaster with their eyes wide open. That night, you break into a half-collapsed site office near one of the schools. You aren't a spy. You aren't trained for this. You're a person pushed past polite rules by the weight of too many names that nobody will say aloud. Inside, the air smells like wet paper and gasoline from generators, like the ghost of productivity haunting its own corpse. You find a cabinet with 2 blueprint tubes, both labeled the same project, both stamped as approved, but the drawings don't match. One shows proper reinforcement, columns that could weather a storm, steel that means business. The other shows value engineering cut so aggressive they look like sabotage pretending to be frugality. Walls thinned, supports halved, concrete ratios adjusted until they're barely more than sand and wishful thinking. In the margins, written in careful handwriting that looks practiced, almost elegant. Ensure progressive failure under lateral load. Your throat tightens. That phrase is technical. It is the language of controlled demolition, of structures designed to fall in a specific way. But here, in this context, it reads like intent. Like murder dressed in engineering jargon. You take photos with shaking hands, copy the key pages onto a USB drive, and tuck the originals back as if restoring the crime scene will protect you. It won T, you know it won T, but ritual feels important when everything else is chaos. The moment you step outside, you hear footsteps that don't belong to the night, measured, unhurried, confident. A figure appears at the far end of the street under a flickering sodium lamp, carrying something long and thin. Not a gun, not dramatic. A utility bar. The kind used to pry boards, the kind construction workers use every day, the kind that could crack a skull without making much mess or noise. He doesn't run. He doesn't need to. He knows the alleys. He knows which walls are weakened, which routes are blocked by rubble, which streets will funnel you like a chute toward a dead end. You sprint anyway. Adrenaline makes you fast. You duck behind a collapsed storefront, press yourself against concrete that still smells like the dust of its own death, and you hear him pass. His footsteps fade. You almost laugh with relief, the kind of manic giggle that comes when your body realizes it might survive the next 5 minutes. Then the ground twitches. A small aftershock. Just a reminder that the earth isn't finished with this place, and the storefront's remaining facade sheds bricks with lazy inevitability, like it was always planning to fall and just needed an excuse. A chunk hits the road where your foot would have landed a second earlier. The disaster itself becomes his accomplice. Physics and conspiracy working hand in hand. You keep moving, lungs burning, ears full of your own heartbeat, and the distant chorus of mourning that never quite stops here. Not day or night. You reach your tent and fumble the USB into your laptop with hands that stop shaking, ready for the dopamine hit of proof, of evidence of something solid you can show the world. The drive opens. It is empty. No files, no photos, Just one video file titled Confession Final. MP4. Your stomach drops before you even click it. The screen shows you in dim light, half asleep, face slack, speaking to the camera as if to a judge. Your voice, your exact voice, every hesitation you recognize as your own, says, "I did it. I made sure it would fall. I wanted to see if anyone would notice, if anyone would care." The video ends. The file metadata is stamped with tomorrow. Estate tomorrow, a confession that hasn't happened yet. Fabricated and ready to deploy the moment you become too much trouble. And outside your tent, someone clears their throat politely, like they're waiting for you to invite them in. You freeze. That throat clearing outside your tent hangs in the air like a question you don't want answered. Your hand hovers over the laptop, the fabricated confession still glowing on screen like an accusation from the future. You wait for the fabric to tear, for hands to grab you, for the polite violence that always follows polite warnings. But nothing happens. Silence stretches so long it becomes its own kind of pressure. Finally, you steel yourself and unzip the tent flap. Nobody's there, just footprints in the dust that could belong to anyone, because everyone is walking through the same grief. The same powdered concrete that used to be walls and futures. You check your pockets obsessively, patting yourself down like guilt is something that can be stolen. Like you're searching for proof you didn't do what the video says you did. Your hands won't stop shaking. The next hours are a psychological vise. You replay every moment, searching for the seam where reality could have been swapped. You try to be rational. Deepfakes exist. Coercion exists. Hacked devices exist. There are explanations. You tell yourself this over and over like a mantra, like logic can be a shield. But the fear isn't just that the confession is fake. The fear is that it is effective. A lie doesn't have to be true to become your future. A lie just has to be convenient for the right people. You've seen how quickly truth gets buried under bureaucratic language and national interest. You've watched evidence evaporate like water on hot stone. You attempt to anchor yourself in verification. Hotel CCTV, broken in the quake. Phone carrier logs. Service disrupted. We're working to restore. Office sign in sheets. Relocated to temporary facilities unavailable for public access. Every attempt to build a timeline that proves where you were, what you did, who you spoke to, meets the same soft wall. Unavailable. Incomplete. Lost. It is not one missing record. It is a pattern of missing. The meta-horror sharpens into something intimate, something that crawls under your skin and makes a home there. You start doubting your own certainty, your own perception, the memory of the column you knocked on that morning. Did it really sound hollow? Or have you convinced yourself it did because you need the story to make sense? Trauma can rewrite details. Systems can rewrite details. Where do you put your faith when both are capable of distortion? The mother still holding her daughter's photo like a warrant, like an indictment that can't be dismissed. Finds you again near the memorial wall. She doesn't mention the confession. She doesn't need to. She studies your face as if she is measuring whether you've been broken yet, whether the machine has chewed you up enough to spit you out compliant and silent. She says they told us the building was strong. Her voice is steady, which makes it worse somehow. She points at the ruins. That was a promise. Her grief doesn't scream, it counts. She is collecting names with other parents, writing them down in notebooks they guard like sacred texts because official lists keep shrinking or shifting. Numbers that don't add up. Children who disappear from records as if they never existed. You realize that is what the voice on the phone meant. Stop counting. Counting is resistance. Counting is accusation. Every name written down is a refusal to let convenience erase tragedy. A stranger approaches, middle-aged, careful posture, eyes that miss nothing. He give you his real name. He says he is part of a citizen effort compiling records, verifying collapses, documenting construction details while the evidence still exists, before the rubble gets cleared and the memory gets smoothed over with official narratives. He offers you a trade. He can show you copies of your missing photos, because you apparently sent them to an address. You don't remember typing, but he wants what you found in the site office. The blueprints. The memo proof might still live somewhere outside your compromised devices. You follow him to a cramped room lit by a single lamp where papers are laid out like a war table. school names, contractor links, inspection stamps, parent testimonies. The atmosphere is tense but purposeful. The closest thing to hope you felt since the quake. Like maybe you are not alone in seeing the shape of what has been hidden. He shows you the photos. They re-yours. Same angles, same framing, same obsessive focus on reinforcement details. The way you always photograph structural elements because numbers don't lie the way people do. But the timestamps are wrong, dated after the earthquake, as if you took calm, deliberate close-ups of a building that was already rubble, as if you were documenting your own handiwork. Someone isn't just deleting evidence. They're rewriting it to make you look impossible, to make you look guilty in a way that is too precise to be accidental. Then he slides one last page toward you, a scanned copy of a handwritten letter labeled Confession, Engineer with your name typed beneath. The handwriting is yours down to the way you loop certain strokes, the way your capital letters tilt slightly left. You can feel your pulse in your teeth. The letter doesn't confess to sabotage in dramatic terms. It confesses in technical language, the kind only you would use. Load-bearing capacity, lateral reinforcement, progressive structural failure. It reads like a professional report turned into a noose, like someone crawled inside your brain and used your own voice against you. Before you can speak, shouting rises outside. The citizen investigator lowers his voice. They're going to pin this on someone. They prefer a technician to a minister. He is not being cynical, he is being accurate. Power protects itself by sacrificing the expendable. He asks you the question that lodges like a splinter. What would you do? Go public and risk becoming the villain on every screen, or go quiet and let the story be sealed? Your phone buzzes, same unknown number. A single line, bring the roster. Then an address, the ruins of the worst collapsed school, and a time 012 midnight. As you stare at the screen, a faint tremor ripples through the ground, an aftershock like a reminder that the earth can move whenever it wants, and so can whoever is hunting you. The message ends with one final sentence that turns your blood cold. Come alone, or she stays buried. You go because the message didn't just threaten a person. It threatened the one thing keeping the parents alive, the act of naming. The moral trap tightens around your ribs like hands. You can TC, bring the roster, and you endanger many. Don't bring it, and you might condemn one. You bring a decoy roster, a partial list padded with deliberate errors, names slightly misspelled. Contractor details shifted just enough to pass a glance but fail scrutiny. The real list, you split it into fragments and hand them to 3 different parents, so no single seizure can erase it. A tiny strategist has victory. You are not helpless, not yet. You leave the citizen investigator a single sentence on paper, no names, just a place. Then delete the draft message from your phone. Like that can scrub your fear from existence. At 012, the collapsed school looks different than it did in daylight, less like rubble, more like a stage after the audience leaves, when the lights go harsh and the illusion of safety dissolves into raw mechanics. Your flashlight beam catches chalk marks on broken concrete, triangles, numbers, notations that aren't rescue guidance but sorting instructions, like someone's been cataloging which pieces of wreckage matter and which can be forgotten. You hear it again. The phone, ringing from somewhere it should not be able to ring. Each time you step closer, it stops. Each time you back away, it starts. You are being steered. No ghosts required. Just psychology and patience, and someone who knows exactly how your fear moves. A figure steps into your light. Hard hat, clean gloves. That same polite posture, like a man trained to speak softly while removing options. He doesn't introduce himself, he says. You brought the roster, and waits in the dust like he owns the minute hand, like time itself is just another tool he controls. You demand proof of life. Your voice cracks on the last word, but you don't care. He gestures toward the ruins, no melodrama, just a location, and says, if you are here to argue, we can bury the conversation. The threat isn't loud. That is what makes it real. What would you do? Hand over the list to save one trapped child, or refuse and bet your conscience on a maybe? You start to speak, start to make the calculation that has been tearing you apart since the message arrived, but the man interrupts with a calm correction. Not that roster, the other one. Meaning he knows about the parents' list, About the contractor and inspection rosters we've been chasing like they re-oxygen. Your decoy wasn't clever. It was expected. You were expected. Every move you thought was yours has already been mapped. Then the ground gives a tiny shiver, an aftershock like a throat clearing. And from under the concrete comes something worse than a scream. A slow, deliberate tapping. 3 taps. Pause, 3 taps. A human rhythm. Hope detonates in your chest so hard it hurts. You drop to your knees, press your ear to a seam in the rubble, and hear breathing. Small, thin, real. The man watches you soften and says almost kindly, "See, I keep my promises." You scramble into rescuer mode. Your brain switches to structural calculations, void spaces, weight distribution. You call softly into the gap, telling the trapped child to keep tapping, to conserve breath, to hold on. You wedge yourself between slabs, feel dust grind into your skin and clothes, and for one surreal second it is like the first moments after the quake again. The world narrowed to your hand reaching into the dark. Your fingers brush fabric, a wrist, a pulse alive, and then the man behind you speaks into a radio. Proceed. Headlights bloom at the perimeter. A loader, not a rescue team. A machine built for clearing, not saving. Its engine idles like a predator choosing when to pounce. The horror is industrial, an impersonal force with a driver whose face you can to see, but whose obedience you can feel like a cold wind. You scream for them to stop. You throw your body in front of the operator, line of sight. The operator looks past you, eyes blank with practiced obedience, the kind of blankness that follows orders because questioning orders costs more than compliance. The bucket raises anyway. The man in the hard hat leans close enough for you to smell clean soap, too clean for this place. He murmurs, "You can be a hero for one child, or you can be honest about thousands. Choose the only thing you can live with." You wedge yourself into the gap, brace your shoulders against shifting concrete that feels like it is breathing, and shout the child, its name, except you don't, to know it. So you use the only name you've got. The one from the class photo you saw days ago that is burned into your memory. Yumin, if you can hear me, tap. The tapping answers, but faint. Not 3 taps now, 2, then 1. The bucket descends. Concrete moans, a sound like the earth, spine cracking. Your ribs compress, your flashlight beam skitters wildly and catches something tucked into a crack, a small plastic card, a student ID smeared with dust, face photo intact, proof the child here is connected to the roster you were told to bring. You snatch it just as the gap tightens and your vision tunnels, edges going dark like someone, turning down the brightness on reality itself. Everything goes muffled, your heartbeat the engine, the man's voice becoming distant, like a broadcast from another room, like you are drowning in air instead of water, and in that narrowing dark, your phone vibrates against your thigh. Not a call, a video notification. One file auto-playing, sound off, showing you walking into the ruins from above. Shot from an angle that should be impossible. Time-stamped 011, 1 minute ago. On screen, you turn toward the camera and mouth, a single phrase you don't remember saying. "I am sorry," and as the slab finally shifts and pins you in place, pressure building in your chest until breathing becomes a conscious choice, the ringing starts again, right beside your ear, coming from a phone you can TC. But that someone, somewhere, is definitely answering. You wake to fluorescent light and the taste of dust that won't leave your tongue, like the earthquake followed you into consciousness and nested there. You are not in a jail cell. You are in what they call a temporary operations room, which is just a nicer phrase for a place designed to make people cooperate without calling it what it is. The walls are that institutional beige that seems engineered to drain hope. A medic checks your bruises with professional boredom, the kind of touch that says you are item 47 on today. List. A man in a pressed shirt too clean for disaster work offers water and says, "We glad you are safe," then slides a folder toward you labeled Stability Review. The phrase sits heavy in the air like a threat wearing formal wear. Inside, printed screenshots of your confession. Except you never confessed to anything. There is your altered metadata timestamps shifted, messages you sent now carrying different words in the preview text, and a statement draft already written in your voice. complete with your speech patterns, your vocabulary, even that phrase you overuse when you are nervous. They've studied you. They've practiced being you. They don't threaten you outright. They do something worse. They narrate your life back to you with small inaccuracies. And you realize they've rehearsed this. They mention your university advisor by name, the one who retired 3 years ago, a project you worked on about load-bearing assessments in 2006, a complaint you filed once about substandard materials on a municipal contract that went nowhere. Your identity is being used as raw material, sculpted into something that fits their narrative better than it fits your bones. You are an ideal witness, the man says gently, like he is offering you a gift. People trust engineers. He pauses just long enough for the other shoe to drop. People also blame engineers. A bargain materializes between you like something conjured. If you sign, they say you'll be allowed to continue support work, help families find closure, be part of the healing process. All those soft words that feel like cotton wrapped around razor wire. If you refuse, you'll be removed for your own safety, which is the kind of sentence that can swallow a person without making a sound. The kind that erases you from the story entirely. You play for time because time is the only tool you still control. You ask about the trapped child, Liu Min, the name that has been carved into your ribs since you saw that student ID. The room goes still, just for half a second. A micro-silence. Then the man smiles like you asked about the weather. Rescue teams are doing their best, he says, voice smooth as poured cement. Names will be verified centrally. There it is again. Stop counting, stop naming, stop making individual ghosts when we need one collective tragedy. They let you go. Not free, but released into a perimeter of invisible rules you spend days discovering. Your phone is returned with a new battery. You didn't request. Your laptop powers up with a fresh password. You didn't set, which means someone's been inside it, rearranging your digital life like furniture. Outside, the disaster zone has shifted from raw chaos to managed narrative. Banners proclaim unity. Official volunteers wear matching vests. There are designated mourning areas, designated speaking areas. Even grief has lanes now, painted lines you are expected to stay between. You see yourself on a television in a relief tent. A news segment plays on loop. Engineer investigated for spreading rumors. Rescue operations hampered by misinformation. The anchor's tone is calm, almost disappointed in you, like you are a child who made a mess and won. To admit it. You are watching the story being manufactured in real time, and you are cast as the villain. Parents nearby glance at you without recognizing you, then recognize you, then look away fast because looking too long might be contagious. A folded note appears under your food tray, written in your handwriting. Same loops, same pressure marks. The way your pen hesitates slightly on downstrokes, yet you don't remember writing it. It says, "Meet me where the concrete is still wet." No date, no time, just that cryptic invitation in your own hand. You consider every suspect, the citizen investigator, the missing colleague, the clean hard hat man, the polite supervisor. Even the mother with the class photo, because paranoia is what happens when reality becomes editable and you can't trust your own memories anymore. But then you notice something that snaps your focus back into method, back into the engineer's mind that solves problems instead of drowning in them. The paper is stamped faintly with an industrial watermark used by cement plant delivery receipts. Not random, not poetic specific. You go because the alternative is to sit still while your name is poured into a mold. You'll never break. The wet concrete is literal, a reconstruction staging site on the edge of town where new foundations are being poured even as bodies are still being found. The timing is obscene. Floodlights wash everything in hard white. Trucks move like insects constructing a hive. Workers shout over the grinding mixers. The horror is in the speed. How quickly permanence replaces evidence. How fast the new story gets laid over the old one. A figure steps from behind a stack of rebar. Your missing colleague alive. Thinner, like he has been wrung out. Eyes ringed dark, as if sleep is something he no longer trusts. Relief hits so hard it hurts, a physical ache in your chest. But he doesn't hug you. He doesn't even smile, he says. They can make you say anything. He tells you fragmented and urgent, words tumbling like rocks in a landslide. After he tried to help you, he was taken to a medical rest area, given something for shock. Woke up with bruises he doesn't remember earning and a camera pointed at his face. He doesn't claim mind control or sci-fi conspiracies. He describes something scarier because it is mundane. Exhaustion, drugs that make you suggestible, repetition until the script feels like your own thoughts. Then editing, clean cuts that make lies look like truth. They don't need you to believe it, he whispers, voice scraped raw. They only need everyone else to. He presses something into your palm, a tiny microsed card wrapped in plastic taped to a cement receipt. This is physical, he says, harder to rewrite. Before you can ask what is on it, a shadow detaches itself from the floodlit perimeter. The clean, hard hat man moving unhurriedly, carrying that same utility bar like an extension of his arm, like it is part of his skeleton. Your colleague's eyes widen. Not in surprise, but recognition. He expected this, meaning someone followed him here, or worse, he was allowed to find you. The trap was never about stopping the meeting. It was about controlling what happens next. He shoves you toward a gap between pallets and hisses. Run. Don't be brave, you run, clutching the microst like it is a heartbeat you can carry. Behind you, metal strikes metal. One clean sound, purposeful and final. Then a grunt cut short. You don't look back. You can't afford the picture your mind will paint. You dive into the dark between trucks, breath tearing at your throat, and your phone vibrates. Good. Now you have it. Bring it to the memorial wall. Same unknown number, same calm tone that makes commands sound like suggestions. And the worst part, the part that freezes your legs mid-stride, is the follow-up line that appears 3 seconds later. If you show it to anyone first, we'll let you watch her die twice. The next day arrives like a stage curtain lifting on a performance nobody asked for. The town feels like it is being repainted while it is still bleeding. Concrete mixers grind their teeth against the morning air. New steel arrives on flatbed trucks with military efficiency. Official statements harden into something indistinguishable from the foundations being poured. The existential threat isn't the earthquake anymore. It is the speed at which a story can be cured of inconvenient facts, scrubbed clean before the wounds even close. You keep the micros card taped inside the back of the class photo the mother gave you, because if your pockets are searched, sentiment is the last place they'll look. The hiding place feels almost clever, like you're finally learning the rules of a game you never wanted to play. You sneak into a corner of the relief tent and borrow a battered laptop from a volunteer media desk. Your hands shake as you slide the micros into the port. The folder opens. 3 files. 3 pieces of evidence that might be the difference between truth and erasure. The first is an audio recording. Voices clipped and careful, names deliberately avoided. But one phrase repeats like a mantra through the static. Make it look like a rumor. One voice belongs to the clean hard hat man. The other voice is higher up the chain, smoother, the kind that gives orders from air-conditioned offices while dust settles on broken schools. The second file contains scanned images of 2 different approval stamps for the same school plan, different dates, different specifications. Proof of a swap. Proof of process corruption that doesn't require you to understand engineering codes or bureaucratic labyrinths. Just eyes. Just the ability to see that 2 things claiming to be the same are fundamentally, fatally different. The third is a video file, your colleague exhausted beyond recognition, reading a statement while an off-screen voice corrects him like a director adjusting an actor's performance. No, say it like you're guilty. The voice is patient, almost kind. Which makes it worse. You watch your colleague's eyes die a little with each take, each repetition, until he sounds convincing even to himself. Proof. Solid ground under your mind for the first time since May 12th. Evidence that can't be talked away or explained as misunderstanding or grief-induced paranoia. Then the file names change. While you're looking at them, letters rearranging into nonsense. Timestamps flipping forward and backward like a clock being wound by invisible hands. Not magic, not supernatural, just remote access, admin control. Someone inside the network with permissions you don't have, watching you watch the evidence, deciding it is time to take it back. Even physical evidence can be digitally haunted. The laptop suddenly reboots. The screen goes black, then white, then returns to a desktop. You don't recognize. When the micros directory opens again, it is empty. A blank white space where truth used to live. But you anticipated one thing. While the files were open, you recorded the screen with your phone. It is imperfect, glare-obscuring corners, shaky framing as your hands refuse to steady. But it is yours. It exists in a device that has been lying to you since this started. Yet somehow, impossibly, still holds pieces of truth between the surveillance and the threats. The choice becomes tactical and moral in equal measure. Go straight to the memorial wall as instructed, risking an ambush but possibly saving whoever they're threatening, or leak the screen recording immediately, send it to anyone anywhere, and accept the consequences. You can feel the weight of both options like stones in your chest. You attempt a third option: delay. Strategic distribution. You make your way toward the memorial wall but stop twice. Once to pass your phone to a nurse with a foreign SIM card, letting her copy the recording to a device before handing yours back. Once to show it to a logistics driver whose phone isn't on the local network, who nods once and says nothing but whose eyes tell you he understands. Redundancy. Multiple points of failure. Counting in technological form. At the memorial wall, parents are writing names faster than officials can erase them. Someone has started numbering the list, tally marks like a heartbeat scratched into stone. The mother is there, class photo held close, eyes red but steady with the kind of strength that comes from having nothing left to lose. When she sees you, she doesn't ask for comfort. She asks, "Did you find her?" You can't lie. You tell her you heard tapping. You tell her you were forced away. You don't tell her about the machine bucket moving concrete while a child's hand was still visible, because some images don't help. They only burn. She closes her eyes once, like a door shutting against a wind she can't fight, then opens them and says, "Then we keep counting until she answers." A small crowd forms as rumors spread. Your face from the television news, your presence here. Two uniformed men approach with polite urgency, the kind that wears courtesy like camouflage. "Come with us for clarification," they say. Around them, the air changes. Volunteers suddenly find urgent tasks elsewhere. People avoid eye contact like it is a checkpoint you fail just by looking. Then help arrives from the least expected place. A teacher you met briefly during your first inspection steps between you and the uniforms and begins arguing about procedure, loudly, publicly. Making a scene they didn't order, creating the kind of mess that requires reports and explanations. The uniforms hesitate, not because they fear her, but because witnesses complicate narratives. You use the hesitation to slip behind the memorial wall. You press the class photo into the mother's hands and whisper, "If anything happens to me, open the back." She grips it like a lifeline and nods once. A silent contract sealed in shared desperation. You move into the alleys, trying to keep crowds between you and the uniforms. Your phone buzzes unknown number. You're learning, but you're still counting wrong. A second message follows immediately. A list of names. The names of the parents who have been writing on the wall. The list ends with the mother's name, her identity now catalogued, marked, targeted. Beneath it, one final line that turns your stomach into ice. Tonight, Reconstruction begins at the wall. You look back toward the memorial and see floodlights being rolled into position. Portable, bright, official. Generators rumble to life. Someone is about to clean the wall permanently, under the excuse of safety and order and moving forward. The names will be pressure washed away. The tally marks erased. The counting stopped. You have minutes to decide whether you'll stand with the parents in full view, become part of the story they're trying to delete, or disappear into the machinery of night to strike at the narrative from somewhere else, from angles they haven't anticipated yet. Because as the lights snap on and the first truck backs toward the wall with calculated precision, you realize the next collapse won't be concrete. It'll be memory itself, crushed under the weight of a story that demands forgetting. Night hits with the weirdness only disaster zones have. Too many lights, too much shadow, too many people pretending not to watch while watching everything. Trucks idle near the memorial wall, like metal predators waiting for permission to pounce. A supervisor with a clipboard announces maintenance and sanitation, words polished enough to hide a massacre of names. The whodunit has become a whydunit, and the answer is brutally simple. Control the count, control the blame, control the future. You decide to act in two layers, public and hidden. Public means stepping into the crowd, making yourself visible, forcing the uniforms to approach you where witnesses can see, where phones can record, where the narrative can't be edited as easily. Hidden means you've already placed your phone recording. Your shaky, imperfect proof into the hands of the logistics driver from earlier, with one instruction that felt like a prayer. Send it when you're outside the county, not to make you famous, to make you harder to erase. The uniforms approach with voices dipped in politeness like arsenic in honey. We need you to cooperate. In the glare of floodlights that turn night into an interrogation room, you see the clean hard hat man again, standing just behind them, utility bar held low like a private punctuation mark. He doesn't look angry. He looks tired, as if he has done this kind of cleanup too many times, as if repetition has worn the edges off his conscience. That is the psychological twist that makes your skin crawl. The villain doesn't cackle. He rationalizes, he believes. He steps closer and finally gives you something like truth. Not names, not confession, but motive, which is somehow more disturbing. If the count keeps rising, he murmurs, voice low enough that only you can hear, the ground never stops shaking. He gestures at the parents still writing names on the wall with the desperation of people who know their words are temporary. They'll build their lives on anger. Someone has to set the foundation. He believes he is preventing chaos. He also happens to be protecting careers, contracts, and the tidy narrative that keeps money flowing in the right directions. An impersonal force wearing a human face, speaking in construction metaphors while erasing children. Here, the story drops its final knife into your hands. Do you expose the recording right now? Trigger the immediate backlash that might put the mother and every parent at that wall in danger? Or do you play along long enough to get Liu Min out? If she is still alive, if that is even a real possibility, you choose the most human option. You buy time for the parents by becoming the distraction. You raise your voice, not screaming, but clear, projected like you're reading measurements at a site inspection. You ask the uniforms to state their authority, to name the regulation allowing destruction of a memorial. The crowd leans in. Phones lift. The supervisor's smile stiffens like concrete setting wrong. Witnesses multiply. The story becomes harder to edit. The clean hard hat man responds by shifting tactics. He doesn't swing the bar. He steps closer and speaks softly so only you can hear. And what he says stops your heart. We found her. Your breath catches. He nods toward a cordoned area near the ruins. Believe, he says, and you hate yourself for believing him even for a second, for feeling hope surge through your chest like electricity. He adds, but not for long. If we keep doing this in public, you move. Because hope is a lever they can still pull, and you're only human. 2 uniforms escort you for coordination, and the crowd assumes you're cooperating, assumes you've chosen practicality over principle. Optics are a cage. They guide you through back streets to a standing school building being used as a temporary admin hub. Inside, the hallways smell like disinfectant and wet paper. Classroom doors are shut. The place feels wrong, too intact, too quiet, as if the earthquake spared it specifically so it could become a set for confessions. They lead you into a classroom where desks are arranged facing a camera tripod. On the board, in clean handwriting that marks every blackboard you've ever studied, is your name and the words clarification statement. The man points at the chair like he is offering you a seat at dinner, at civilization, at normalcy, and then you see the mother's class photo on the desk. Your stomach drops through the floor. She has been here. Or they brought the photo to make sure you understand the rules of leverage, the currency of cooperation. The clean hard hat man sets the utility bar against the wall with deliberate care and pulls out a phone. He plays an audio clip. Faint tapping. Slow breathing. Then a child's voice, whispering help. It could be Liu Min. It could be any child. It could be a recording from days ago or minutes ago or a year ago from somewhere else entirely. The uncertainty is the torture, the lack of verification the weapon. He says, read the statement. We release the location. You look at the camera lens and realize the deepest meta-horror of this entire nightmare. You're not being asked to lie privately. You're being asked to perform the lie, to become the instrument that seals the narrative. To let your professional credibility be the concrete poured over truth. A desperate counterplay forms in your mind. You sit. You begin reading, steady voice, engineer calm, the tone you've used 1,000 times to explain stress loads and foundation ratings. While your fingers under the desk peel the backing off the class photo just enough to free the microsed card. You slide it into the seam of the desk's broken laminate. where a future student might find it years from now. A time capsule of truth buried in plain sight. Mid-sentence, you change one word. A tiny technical word, innocent to the casual listener, explosive to someone who knows, who has been counting. The stamp number, the approval code, a signal to the mother, to the teacher, to anyone still keeping track. The clean, hard hat man's eyes narrow. He steps forward, realizing something is wrong. The camera keeps rolling. He reaches for the photo too late and realizes you've hidden something. And the last thing you hear before the lights cut and the recording ends is your own voice played from his phone, calm as ever, the voice from the doctored interview saying, "Stop counting." Except this time it is followed by a new line you've never heard before, words you never spoke but that sound exactly like you. "Or we'll count you." Weeks later, the town looks better in the way a bandage looks better than a wound. Fresh concrete poured over rubble. New paint that smells like denial. A rebuilt school gate with a slogan about resilience that no one who lost a child can read without nausea. The horror doesn't live in what you see. It lives in what isn't there. No wall of names, no class photos, no public counting, just smooth surfaces and official silence. In the version that matters, the one with distribution and authority, you became a cautionary tale. A stressed engineer who spread misinformation during a crisis. Your face appears in training videos about rumor control, frozen mid-sentence. Looking exhausted and guilty, your confession plays in clipped segments, stripped of context, polished into certainty. You said what they needed you to say and now it plays on loop in classrooms and government offices. A vaccine against questions, but the alternate timeline refuses a clean ending. The mother keeps counting anyway, redundantly, on paper passed hand to hand like samizdat in a surveillance state. The microst you hid doesn't fix everything. It doesn't bring children back, or collapse the system, or make anyone pay. But it does one crucial thing. It makes the truth harder to bury than a body. A copy surfaces somewhere outside the county, then another. Not enough to topple the machine, just enough to jam it, to make it grind instead of glide. Resistance, not victory. Persistence, not justice. And late one night, in a room you can't describe on camera, your phone rings once. You don't answer. You let it ring until it stops, until the silence feels like a decision, until you realize that some investigations never close because some bodies keep counting long after they're supposed to stop. So here is the question that matters. If you were in that rubble at midnight with a roster in one hand and a child's voice in your ears, would you trade the list for one life? Or would you risk that one life to save the count, to preserve the names that power wants erased? Tell me in the comments. Be honest. Because the scariest thing in this story isn't a collapsed building or a man with a utility bar. It is a system that learns your name, your voice, your face, and uses them better than you ever could. If you want more grounded what-if investigations where history meets horror and the monster is always human, hit that subscribe button. Like this video if you appreciate stories that don't offer easy answers. And share this with someone who understands that the most terrifying question isn't what if monsters are real. It is what if the people building the world already know your breaking point, and they've written it into the blueprint. Thanks for staying until the end. Sleep well if you can.